Well, hello. Hello. Hi, everybody. Let's see. Hi. Can you hear me? Yeah, I suspect you can. Uh, good stuff. Good stuff. Hey, how are you? Good. Thanks for joining me. Appreciate it. Good evening. Hello. Hi. I am waiting for the toilet to. You probably can hear that. There's a toilet that's. Hola. Yes, we can. Okay, good. That's what former President Obama used to. That was his campaign rally. Yes, we can. Si se puede, which is a good message. So I'm in Chicago, Illinois, which is a beautiful city in a beautiful state in the middle of the country. And I don't know if you know about America. If you're in it, well, it's probably late for you. So I appreciate you. I appreciate you hanging out and joining me today. But yeah, this country is kind of interesting. We've got two real major cities, major metropolitan cities. One is New York, and the other is Chicago, right? And what I mean by major metropolitan cities is skyscrapers, right? Like, how much of your city has a skyscraper? And so I forget the exact numbers, but I read once that it was like New York has 300 skyscrapers, and Chicago has like 200, like 150. Okay, and then number three is Los Angeles with like 20. Right, it's not even close. It's a whole different ball game. And then San Francisco. I don't know. We've got a few. The numbers are staggering. When you think about New York and then Chicago, and then excuse me, I just finished a very late dinner. I just got in from San Francisco, where I live, where I usually do my streams. I just got in. I don't know, 3 hours ago, 4 hours ago. It's 11 o'clock now. You figure 8 o'clock. Yeah, 3 hours ago. I landed at the airport 7 o'clock ish. So I got to the hotel 8 o'clock and went out and got some dinner, and here we are. And what I want to do is I was just thinking about it on the plane because I didn't have much else to do because the Wi-Fi was spotty as all get out, right? Just terribly spotty. So I was thinking about it. What can I do to improve that code that we wrote for the remote chunking when we looked at Spring Batch the last few days? So my hope is we can spend some time, and see if we can improve that with some auto configuration. I already built part of it. When I wrote part of it in the car from the airport because I had no Wi-Fi, so I couldn't go to the initializer and generate a new project to try it out on the plane. But I built part of it in the taxi from the airport to the hotel, and that was for the worker node, right? For those of you who just joined, we've been looking at Spring Batch, and Spring Batch is awesome. And we looked at how we can move work from a node and then send it over to another node to distribute the work so that it gets farmed out in a distributed fashion to other nodes. And in theory, you could take advantage of the efficiencies of working on other nodes. And this is great for long-lived work, things that might take a while, or better, or maybe it's just you've got another node that is more suited to the kind of work you want to do, right? And that is increasingly a common theme, right? You see people using, ARM or the GPUs or whatever. They might be doing that benefits from the particulars of the hardware there. So the base batch job happens in a normal node, but then you have this one thing that requires some extra work, and you move it to another node, right? So it's either long running or it's specialized. Either way, it belongs somewhere else. So that's what I'm hoping we can work on. If that's cool with you, I think it'll be fine. And also, I just wanted to say, I can't believe, I just can't. I mean, I don't know if you've been following the progress of this little channel, but we are now at, I don't know, I forget where are we right now? YouTube. 978 subscribers, and considering that this channel didn't exist, my YouTube channel. Here, let me undo a mistake I made last time. Let me share my screen here. Okay. Ta-da! Okay, considering that I just started this channel less than a month ago, the outpouring of kindness and support has been amazing. I really appreciate it. So we're doing a live stream. I can only hang out for a few hours. I have to go to bed soon. After all, I have important customer meetings tomorrow morning. But I figured we could write some code together and answer questions and talk and do some cool stuff. I'm always happy to chat with my peeps, So thank you all for joining me. Obviously, it's a random. I don't normally stream at this hour. I've been thinking about maybe I could do some more streams late night, because if I'm honest with you, friends, during the day I have a lot of okay. So before the pandemic, I did a lot of travel. Right? Can you all see me? My iPad is slow, so I'm not sure if you can see me or not, or if everything's coming through okay or not. But before the pandemic, I traveled, a million kilometers every year. I would get on a plane and go to anywhere and everywhere that I could. And then the pandemic happened, and then the economy crashed, and it's just been a weird, bumpy, few years during which it's been just increasingly difficult to get on planes. And so where before I did a million kilometers every year, right? A million kilometers on planes every year, visiting 6 of 7 continents all around the planet, hundreds of cities, 100 cities maybe every year. I mean, just all over the planet every year, right? Whereas before I did that, now, have Zoom will travel, right? I can be on Zoom and talk to anybody anywhere in the world. So before I didn't get a lot of sleep because I was just constantly bouncing around. Hey, thank you, Nishant. Nishant, you are my new hero. Thank you, sir. I appreciate you for that. Subscribing to my YouTube channel. That's the channel that I'm working on, right? I mean, that's where I'm streaming first. And if I lost all my money and I had nowhere to stream, and I could only stream at one place, and I didn't have the money to support one of those multi-streaming things, I would stream on YouTube. So, but yeah, anyway, so I used to travel, and now I have, I didn't get a lot of sleep back then. My circadian cycle was bad. You got to sleep. It turns out it's very important. You got to be in bed at a regular cadence every night or whatever. And it doesn't even all that matter. It doesn't even all that much matter when you sleep. It just matters that you sleep consistently, right? And so before I was just I was a wreck, I wasn't doing as well as I could have been doing, and I didn't even know it at the time. I felt fine, um, but now, with budget restrictions and with the pandemic before that and all that, I have all these meetings with all these amazing people all around the world, and so a lot of these meetings are late at night. I meet with people in Europe and in EMEA. So my day is typically I wake up at 10 in the morning. And then I can meet with people in the Americas. I'm on the West Coast in the United States. So by that point, if 10 o'clock, it's already 1 in the afternoon for people in New York, for example, right? So the day gets away from me very quickly. But I wake up at 10, have my coffee and breakfast, and then I'll have meetings. I'll do whatever work I need to get done. I'll start streaming. And then that would be cool. Yeah. And a Udemy course. You know what? I am thinking about that. Let me know. Would you be interested in a Udemy course? I would love to know about that. Yeah, I would love to do it. I've got a couple ideas that I'm thinking about, and let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's not get ahead of ourselves though. Let's focus on this YouTube channel, and then I can turn that content eventually into something amazing, right? I'll refine it and polish it and publish it. But for now, let's just have some fun on this YouTube channel, right? And in the meantime, I do have my live lessons courses, right? Those are available should you like to watch those there. Live lessons, from Pearson, and there's some good ones there. I just did one I did a couple last year, in fact. So One called Cloud Native Java. That's the one I'd recommend for all things, microservices and Spring Boot and whatever. It hasn't yet been updated to Spring Boot 3.0, but even with that, it's still a very useful course. Well, anyway, I used to. So now I wake up at 10, have meetings in the Americas, then like 3 in the afternoon. No, 4 in the afternoon. Let's say 4 in the afternoon. People in Japan and Korea start waking up, and by 6, I'm able to talk to people in Singapore, Malaysia, and China, and whatever. And then you get to like 8 a.m., 9 a.m. Sorry, 8 p.m., 9 p.m., 10 p.m. You get people in South Asia, and then by midnight you get to, by 11 even, you get people in Eastern Europe, and then by midnight you get people in Central Europe, and then Western Europe, and then the UK, right, and all EMEA in general, basically around that time as well. So and then I, by that point, it's like 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning. I've even done presentations for people at 4 in the morning. I'm willing to stay up late. So my days, it's weird, right? My meeting schedule is weird. I have meetings usually all day. So when I'm not on stream, I'm either working with people or I'm writing code or whatever. And so I've been thinking, gosh, maybe I could do more streams at midnight my time, which would be, like I say, like early morning EMEA time, right? EMEA/UK, right? Yeah, I don't know. We'll see if that becomes a thing. Right now it's 2300 in Chicago, which means it's 2100 San Francisco time, which means it's still fairly early, right? 21 plus it's like 5 in the morning for people in Paris, and 4 in the morning in the UK, for example. So too early right now. So right now I'm dealing, I suspect, I'm willing to bet a lot of people who are either up very late, like me, or people who are in EMEA, Asia, right? In Asia right now, and that's cool. I love this. I love that this platform enables me to connect to all these wonderful people, and because of that, this channel is growing by leaps and bounds, faster than even I could have dreamed. So I appreciate that. Okay, friends, let's dive into some code. We've got so much to. I really want to see if we can get this to work before I sleep. Right, that's the goal here, friends. So let me just recap what's happened. So if you were following along, I've got to hold on 1 second. Okay, I'm gonna just do that, and you shouldn't be able to see my screen. Slack is gone. Okay, now we're back to that. Nope, we want to. How about that? Okay, I want to share my screen here. Yeah, it looks like you can see my screen. I don't know. I'm not sure what's going on with my iPad. It's so weird right now. Yeah, okay, you can see my screen. That should be fine. So good. Let's let me know if you can see my screen. Like, I'm using StreamYard to do these live streams, and I don't know half the time whether it's working or not. Hello. Okay, well, I'm gonna assume it's visible to you. I don't know. Oh yeah, okay, good. Thank you. Okay, yeah, thank you. Maybe there's a bit of delay between when you type in a comment and when I can see it here in this StreamYard console. Okay, good. So we built a Spring Batch application. For those of you who are just joining, we built a Spring Batch application over the last several live streams, which just analyzes some CSV data, and then it ingests it, puts it in a SQL database, and then it creates a view, or basically a table that contains a sort of a denormalized version of that data. And then we get to a point where we want to do some processing on records from that data. And I have been very vague about what that could be, right? I don't care. It doesn't all that much matter. But imagine you want to do something long-lived with the data that's that's coming from that table, that view that we create at the end, right? And so I'm, you can just imagine anything that takes time, where it makes no sense to do it on this leader node itself. You would want to move that over to some other node where it could benefit from concurrency and from distribution, right? And what kind of things am I talking about? Well, you want to render a video, you want to do some analytics, you want to send it into a Spark job, you want to even if you want to produce a report or render an image or whatever, right? Or just anything that could take more than a second or two, where it's not efficient to do that in sequence, especially for large chunks of data. In this case, as it turns out, by the time the process gets to this particular step in the job, there's not a lot of data to deal with, but at scale, you can imagine there'd be a lot more data, right? And so in that case, it becomes very useful. Or even if you just want to invoke something else, you want to invoke some other code that lives elsewhere. And so that would be a function of like, hey, I want to like invoke a AWS Lambda, or I want to like send data into a data grid or whatever. And that work is best done in some other service. Okay. And that's called, so the idea is that you get to the step, and then the work of processing chunks of the data gets moved to another node, and we call that remote chunking, right? In our example, we did a lot, right? Here's the code. It's a lot, right? Here's the code for the leader, right? And in the leader, we have the item reader, which reads data from the table. And then we have the step itself, which here's the reader. The processor, we're just converting the objects that come from here into JSON. And then the writer, we're sending the data out with this special kind of item writer called a chunk message channel item writer. Okay. And that's part of Spring Batch. And then there's also this business around a chunk handler, and the chunk handler lives in the Spring context. And it, given a step, which is our step that we're doing this item reader, processor, and writer, given that step, and given this special item writer that sends data out, this is the item writer here. It sends data out using the message operations, the messaging template, and it sends it out on a Spring framework message channel, which is this one right here. Given all of that, or actually expects the replies on this channel, but it sends it out on the default channel for this messaging template. So given all that, there's a lot of stuff here. And then what happens when the data gets put into the channel? Well, we have a Spring integration flow for outbound and inbound. So we send the data from the channel to Spring integration. Spring integration can then do whatever you want with it. In this case, I just have it sending data over RabbitMQ. And then when the worker node gets the message from RabbitMQ, it does some processing, and then its job is to send the response back. And this leader code, will look at that response and go, okay, this bit of data that we needed to get processed has been processed, and it'll just keep moving on like that, right? So that's all happening in this code. And frankly, it's a little much. It's a lot of like work, it's a lot of like moving parts, and it makes it very hard to kind of like keep track of what's going on. To understand all of this, you need to be familiar with Spring integration, RabbitMQ, Spring Batch, and just general systems architecture. That's a lot to ask from somebody who's just thinking about, hey, I gotta process this data, right? So I was thinking, gosh, wouldn't it be nice if we had some sort of mechanism to make that easier, right? Some sort of autoconfig. So that's what I've been working on. If you have questions about anything in Spring, anything in the Java ecosystem and so on, I'm happy to talk about that as well. But I was hoping to work on this this autoconfig here with you, right? We'll see if we can't make that work a lot smaller. So here's another application. Here's a Spring Batch application in another piece of code where I'm using this autoconfig that I've developed, right? So I've developed the autoconfig for the leader, and that's this bit right here, right? Here's the remote chunk auto configuration. And the idea is that you would put this on the class path. You just add the library that contains this code on the class path. And then, like, 95% of the work of remote chunking would go away, right? You'd have a Spring Batch task step like this. So this, in theory, this would go away. You wouldn't have this at all. We're still working on getting rid of that, but you can imagine that wouldn't be there. You'd have a job like this, and that's it. You'd have your job and your step, just like normal Spring Batch stuff. So, if I'm creating this step, let's say I've got a step that just a sample step, right? This is just a silly example, but I'm creating a list of customers. I've got a list of customers that I'm going to read. In this case, I've just hard-coded 3 records. Who cares, right? You can just imagine it could be any item reader. It could be a SQL database. It could be Kafka. It could be XML or CSV data, whatever. It doesn't matter, right? I'm just doing a simple in-memory item reader just for our example. For each record that I read, I want to turn it into JSON, and then I want to write out the data and do some remote chunking. Well, in that case, I need the ItemWriter that my auto configuration will create for us, the one that will do the distribution of the data over to another node over a channel, right? That's the chunk ItemWriter, the chunking ItemWriter. So I've created a qualifier annotation here, and I don't know if you've played with qualifiers, but basically in Spring, when you do dependency injection, sometimes you have multiple beans of the same type, and you need to disambiguate them. So for example, suppose I wanted to inject the message channel for the outbound and the message channel for the inbound. Well, if I just did this, right, and assuming I just called this 1 or some, this is A and this is B, if I just did that, Spring doesn't know which one is which. It does take a cue if you have debug symbols from the name of the variable, but even that's kind of flaky, right? You don't want to rely on that, right? And so Spring has because if you don't have debug symbols, that won't work. And basically it's just very flimsy. If somebody refactors the name, then suddenly your code breaks, which is very nobody wants that kind of grief. It's too magic even for me, frankly. So Spring has this mechanism called a qualifier, and basically you can say, hey, I want a bean of type message channel, but I also want the one that's called inbound. Okay, and you can use a qualifier here like that, right? I want the one that's called outbound. Now, doesn't matter what you name the variable, it'll get it correctly injected. It's going to match the name of the bean and the type of the bean and give you the correct one there. Now, you can go a step further, right? Which is what I've done here. I want the outbound chunk channel and the inbound chunk channel. And what I've done there is this is outbound. What I've done there is I've created my own custom annotation, but it in turn has a qualifier on it. So Spring just takes this qualifier to mean that it's a type safe binding, basically. So now if I look at the auto configuration that I've created, you can see I've defined this bean here, outbound chunk channel for the message channel for requests that go out to the remote node, and then I've got the inbound chunk channel that represents the data that's coming back from the remote node after the processing has been done. And I've annotated both of these with my custom qualifier annotation. Okay, so this is the producer of the bean, but now anybody who's using this auto configuration, they can just inject that channel and they can handle it however they want. They can say, okay, well, when a message comes through the outbound channel, I can then send it out over Kafka or RabbitMQ or whatever. I can use Spring integration here to just send, right? You can do whatever you want there. That's pretty easy. So you don't have to worry about writing most of the code for the auto configuration. All you got to do is provide the logic for what happens when you send a message out on that channel that Spring and Spring Batch and Spring integration are going to provide, and what happens when the data comes back from the inbound channel. Okay, and in this example so far, just to keep it simple, since I don't have auto configuration for a leader node, for a worker node, I've just got the, like I said, I just did it in the taxi in the car on the way from the airport. Since I've only got logic here around what happens when I send the data out, to just make it easier to kind of conceptually see that everything's working, I wrote this little integration flow. And basically I'm saying when data comes in on this inbound channel, that's what this is, then process it. And I'm going to say, okay, if the inbound data on that channel is of type chunk request, then create a chunk response in the same node, right? This is a silly example. I'm just doing a loop back basically. I'm not leaving the JVM. So the data is going to be sent over the channel. I then get the request, and I just immediately turn right back around and send it back as a chunk response. Okay. Now, normally this would happen on another node. Normally, you take the data from the channel, send it out over Kafka or RabbitMQ or Redis or an FTP server or whatever, and it would be a chunk request that goes to another node, and then the other node would produce the chunk response whenever it's done doing the work that you're trying to do. Okay, so this is just kind of like a harness. It's a test, really. Okay, so what I want to do now is the worker node. This is the leader node. We've got it working, right, to the point where I can just write a job and then write a step, and I have to make sure that something useful happens when the data gets sent on the outbound channel. But basically, I don't have to worry about anything else, right? And this is also nice because I don't take away the flexibility. You can use Spring integration with Kafka, with RabbitMQ, with JMS, with MQTT, with TCP, with Twitter, with email, with files, with FTP, with SFTP, with FTPS. I mean, whatever. Sky's the limit, right? And so as long as you know about channels, inbound and outbound channels, as long as you know about how to use a channel correctly with Spring integration, then you can use any protocol that you want. It's very, very flexible. Okay, so with that, let's now see if we can build the worker side of this, right? The other side of the equation, which is I want to consume the data and then process it. In this case, we'll just like thread.sleep or something, just to simulate something that takes a little while. So this is not related to our initial code, our initial Spring Batch code that we've been looking at for the last several streams. But if the goal is to prove it out here, in the forge of our little experiment here, and then integrated it into that code. And so maybe we'll do that in another stream tonight, in the next whatever hour, half hour, whatever. I hope to just make the round trip work. Okay. And if you got questions, if you want to talk about stuff, great. I'm happy to talk. I'm happy to chat about whatever's out there. I mean, this is another thing I would love to start doing is, to look at. I don't know if you February. Ooh, hey, what happened there? It looks like the blog hasn't gone out yet. Ooh, that's not good. What is this? Bear with me, friends. I'll be right back. Okay. I'm still here. I think you can hear me, but hopefully you can't see my desktop. Let me just make sure. Yeah, good. So you can still see me, right? I just need to do something very quickly. I published This Week in Spring like whatever 18 hours ago. So why isn't it out there yet? Why hasn't it been published? These are the questions that bedevil me at the moment. Yeah, ask me your question about Spring Batch. That's perfect. And I will see why this blog hasn't been published yet. Okay, so your use case is, let me put that up there. Let's see. Your use case, Nishan, is you have 10 million items in the database, which will be searched uh, through a search criteria by the user. So the user will search some of your 10 million records. The database returns paginated results for the 100,000 items with 100 items in each page. Okay. The database returns. So wait, why doesn't it just return 100,000? I don't. Well, so you're presenting 100 records. So you're saying the database gives you 100,000, but you're only showing 100 records per page for the user. Okay, I think I understand. And then until you heard about Spring Batch, you were thinking about using Spring Scheduler. However, the Docker pod is ephemeral. So what was it? What would you do with it? What would you do with this Spring Scheduler? However, the Docker pod is ephemeral, and it will lose all the progress for items processed thus far. So okay, so you're doing a search from the database, getting 100,000 records at a time. What do you need to do with them? I'm confused. What's the batch process? Oh, I did miss a point. Yeah, sorry. I'm trying. Is it that your is it that my app for live streaming is uh, well, okay, what is the point that I miss? But yeah, I mean, Spring Batch is good because it does persist the data, that your process. It doesn't persist the data itself; it persists the state in the data. So if you're doing processing over a million rows and you got to row 650,000 of a million, then at least you'll know where to resume, so you don't have to redo all the work. Okay. So anyway, let me Oop. Oh, okay, yeah, good. Hey, I'm glad that helps. I feel like I misunderstood your question, so I'm not quite sure what the question was. But if you feel like you got enough out of my answer, great. If not, and this goes to all of you, feel free to just send me a direct message on Twitter. I'm slow, but I do eventually respond. Sometimes it takes me like a month, but I do get back to people. And if you really want help, I'm here. Obviously, I stream almost all the time now. But even if I'm not here, just post it on Stack Overflow with the right tag. We the Spring Engineering Group focuses on Stack Overflow. We care about answering questions there whenever we can. So let us know if we can help. Um, okay, let's get back to this. I published a blog. I had to log into the Spring blog and publish it. I wish I could wait a few more minutes and not worry that I missed something, but let's just keep. I think we should just get going. So let's see here. StreamYard. Okay. Can you see my screen? Okay, hopefully you can see it. And so I hit publish on this. Again, I wrote this blog like whatever, early morning California time today, right? It should have been out all day, but I'm just finding out right now that the blog that I wrote for today, the 14th of February, Valentine's Day, isn't there. The last blog is my blog announcing the latest episode of my podcast, a beautiful podcast, which, by the by, I hope you listen to. So every Tuesday I do This Week in Spring, every Friday for most people, but Thursday for the Americas. I do a podcast episode, and then of course I'm streaming on this channel all the time. So I'm just waiting for the blog to show up. In the meantime, let's just get back to this, okay? Okay, so I think we're on the same page about everything that I've just talked about. What we want to do now is build the auto configuration for the consumer of the work that's been sent over the channel, right? So that on the consumer side, we don't like right now this is just a test harness, right? But in theory, something should be waiting to receive the message from the incoming requests on the worker nodes and then process it. So my question then is, should I create another module? Because remember, I've actually got 3 products from this exercise. The products are some auto configuration that can be that will live in its own jar, and that will be shared by both the leader and the worker node. Then I've got the leader node and I've got the worker node. So leader, worker, and then the auto config. Those are 3 different jars, 3 different bits of code. But for now, to keep things a little more agile, I've been putting the auto config right next to the sample example for the worker node, right? So this is an actual Spring Batch job. In a separate package, I've got the auto configuration. Eventually, this auto config will live in its own jar, and I can bring it into any Spring Batch app, including the one that we built over the last several days in my Let's Code stream. So I think for now, let's just create a consumer, and I'll build auto configuration there for the consumer. I think, yeah. Oh, is that? Do I want to do that? If I don't want to do that, why wouldn't I want to do that? I think I do, because then I would have to. Otherwise, for every little change, I would have to republish the auto config to my local Maven repository. And since I'm just trying to I'm thrashing right now. I'm just trying to get something working. I don't want to have to do a manual build, reset, deploy, reload, and rerun every single time. The reset and reload flow is painful when you have to do publishing to your local Maven repository. And I don't really want to do a multi-module Gradle or Maven build, partly because I would have to convert this one to Maven if I was going to do Maven, and partly because I don't really know enough about Gradle to feel comfortable doing that quickly. I can do it, but it's just not something I do very quickly yet. So yeah, okay, let's create another module. Let's create another app, another jar, another piece of code for the worker node. Okay, is this published yet? There it is. Look at that. This week in Spring. So it's weird when I go to the Spring when I go to our blog, they've reworked the engine. So now, oh yeah, okay, sorry, buddy. Yeah, questions are gone. So now when I can you see my screen? Present screen. Entire screen. Good. Okay, so it takes a while, right? Like I go there, I hit publish, and then 8 minutes later, it shows up on Spring.io, which is a bit of a bummer because you can't really do fast feedback. I think they're working on it, but in the meantime, it's tripping me up. Okay, so let's move on. Let's see here. Close that. Go back here. What's the easiest way to just I guess I can just copy this. Okay, so let me close this down. This IntelliJ instance. Okay, and let's see. Copy our batch to leader. Our batch worker. Okay, and then cd batch mrf everything. Sure. rf.idea Gradle. Okay. Copy our, move our leader to here, move worker to here, and I want to find name get rf leader.get rf leader worker.get. Okay, so now I've got a directory with 2 modules in it. Leader should be just fine. Worker is the one we need to upgrade. So let's see. Git add everything. Git status. Git commit. 2 modules. Git push. Okay. Git status. Okay, we got the leader node. Let's just open that up again in IntelliJ. Oops. We're opening up the leader again, and we'll go to the batch application. I'm going to rename this to be leader application, just to be a little bit clearer, right? Okay, refactor. And then I have 0 tests. 1 test I do have is going to get in the way, so we'll remove that for the moment. Okay, so leader, good. Let's run you, not lead application, leader node. Okay, restart this. Okay, that's the leader. Now we need to work on the starter code. So idea worker node, and we'll do idea build.gradle here as well. rmrf. Okay, the worker, and we'll just we want to reload that build.gradle. So is there a Gradle option in here? I mean, it seems fine. Okay, everything's happy. So let's clean up here a little bit. Again, right now I'm doing a lot of duplicative work because, again, at the end of the day, I won't have, I'll have a separate standalone autoconfig jar, a starter that I can bring in, that'll bring in all these other dependencies for me for both the leader and the worker. So the creation of a leader and a worker node will be a lot more trivial. Okay, so here is the worker. Okay, we'll say it's true. Here I've got the remote support. How do I want to do this as 2 separate things, right? Leader, go in there. So okay, do refactor, and then resources. Leader, good. So that's all updated. That should be just fine. What about this thing? We want to do worker. Okay, and then we can move all this into the worker node. Okay, do the refactor. And here, what about this? What about the autoconfig over here? Do I want to refactor that? Maybe I do, because I don't actually need this anymore, do I? So this we can call remote chunking leader auto configuration. Okay. Do refactor. and put this over here. Don't need that. That. And okay, so I'm just moving everything up to the top level. So now for my leader node, I've got this autoconfig, remote chunking leader autoconfig. Okay. Everything else is basically the same. Nothing will change from the leader side, except I just wanted to make the arrangement a little bit more clear. So these annotations, these qualifiers, they only apply for the leader so far. And I need to like explore what happens in the worker. So why is this? Oh, see, this is the other thing. Go to your IntelliJ. What is it? About IntelliJ? No. Where's your default settings? New project setup. Settings for new projects. Okay, so go there. And then inspections. And then normally what I've got a new version of IntelliJ. So normally I just disable the Spring stuff. Okay, there you go. Now I grant you that that's probably not going to be everybody's situation, and maybe inspections are going to help you. But I find that I get more false positives than I should, right? And so since I don't need the extra help, and since the distraction comes not from the bug but from the false reporting of the bug, I just tend to disable them. Okay, so PQRS, hit OK, apply, OK. There we go. Good. See, that's perfectly valid Spring code. There's not these annotations there, these qualifier annotations, but IntelliJ doesn't agree. So we just make IntelliJ be quiet a little bit. Okay, so that's my leader node. Let's go ahead and work on the worker node here. So remote chunking autoconfig, same idea. We're going to refactor this, pulling things up. Worker. So what did I call it over here? I called it node application and remote chunking worker auto configuration. Okay, do refactor. And same idea. I'm going to move these properties up a little bit so that I can keep it a little simpler cognitively and code-wise. Good. This. Okay, and then the worker. This. Okay. Okay, so what's required for the worker? Well, we already wrote this code before for our let's code example. So we're just going to copy and paste and then rework it until it fits in an autoconfig. So here's all of that. Oh, goodness. Okay, let's see. Here's all that. So all that out. Okay, and rid of that. That. I don't need the ItemWriter. Okay, so we get rid of that. We do need the chunk processor, chunk handler. So we need to make sure that works. We don't need the deserialization logic. That's particular to my example. We do need the integration flow. Yeah, we need to talk about that. Okay, so the channels we need, this stuff we need. Integration flow. So for now, we can comment this out because I don't want that to be prescribed by the autoconfig. Okay. This is the item processor. So we've got a So this is the thing on the worker node that accepts the requests from our. So this is on the worker node that accepts the requests from the leader node, and so Spring Integration takes those requests from the channel called requests, and then passes them to this component, which then does some work with it, and the output of that channel is sent to this. So what we want to do is write this in such a way that the channels are pluggable. Okay. Right now the channels are just strings. A service activator in Spring Integration is an escape hatch. So normally in an enterprise application integration flow, normally you have messages that come in. You do some work on it, like filtering and transforming and splitting and aggregating, and then you send the message out. And so there's well-known Lego brick components that you can use there, right? Adapters and things like that. But if you just want to like call some code, then use a service activator, okay? It's your escape hatch to just do whatever you want to do in the middle of a pipeline. So here we have a service activator that is comprised of this chunk processor, chunk handler. It's a messaging endpoint. Okay, from Spring Integration. Initializing bean. Service activator. Okay. Handle chunk. So that's the method that gets called with a chunk request. So the messages are coming in from that code ourselves manually. Not this code, the code that routes it to this. We can do that ourselves, and maybe that would be a little bit cleaner. So let's think about that, right? So if I wanted to create a thing that takes data from a channel, so I can say integration flow, chunk processor, chunk handler, integration flow, turn integration flow dot from, and then I have it from this channel get dot handle, and here I have this bean, right? This bean of type chunk handler, whatever. Let's see, whatever type we want it to be. I have a question of where we get the item processor. So this is item processor. Could just be anything, I guess. Item processor. Okay, new item processor. All right. So I have a no op for now, but so yeah, we could use that item processor by default. Then we need a writer. The item writer is, oh dear, yeah. So we need some way to plug in the user's item processor and item writer. That's the important part here. So we need custom qualifiers. Now I'm starting to think about this a little bit more. Yeah, that's what needs to happen here. So for this, I guess we could just use the default, right? Not a big deal. I don't even know what I guess the value that we'd get is a chunk request, right? So the contract is chunk request in, and then what do we do with the output? So there's that. That's the contract technically. What we're going to get on the inbound channel is this. So let's think about this. We have this chunk handler. It needs an item processor and an item writer. Okay. What about this writer? The writer is also, for now, we just want it to be a like no op, just to prove that it's working. So item writer Okay, return new ItemWriter, and so on. Okay, good. So there's that. So we need to create this bean. Can we initialize, like, what does this require? What other lifecycle requests does it have, or requirements? It doesn't look like it does. It's just a very simple Spring Bean that has initializing bean, and that's it. So in theory, we could just new that up ourselves manually. So we could go down here, like we could say this. Okay, take that up to this. Our integration flow. Here we go. Okay, chunk handler, and we've got the item processor, item writer. Okay. Processor. Okay, and then we want to, what is the issue with this one? Oh. Okay, object. Okay, chunk after property set. I want that to be, throw an exception. Okay. All right, so we're going to create this handler and then manually invoke a method whenever a request comes in from this request channel. So message, okay, like this. And we'll say message.get payload, var payload. And I think this is, I think we can be sure that this is going to be a chunk request. That's, isn't it? If we're using RabbitMQ, is that true? That's probably true. Yeah, I think so. So payload instance of chunk request. Okay, the payload should be an instance of chunk request. Good. Okay, so if that's true, then we can do chunk processor handler dot handle chunk request. Oh, I should do the smart thing. Okay, so if, okay, CR. See here. Oh, it's just why is this unhappy? Okay, so it's throwing an exception. Oh, Lumbuk, save me. Void handle chunk. Oh, I really want to do this. No, I guess I just have to wrap it. Okay, fine. Ugh. Why? Ready? So if that request comes in, if it's an instance of chunk request, then just invoke this. I guess we don't need to do that. Do we need to do that? What's the issue? So do I need a suppress warning unchecked or something like that? Okay. So it should be assert state payload instance of request. the payload must be an instance of chunk request. Put that up here. Okay, so if that's true, then we use this chunk processor chunk handler. Maybe I could just create that as a separate bean and just inject it. I mean, that seems harmless enough. I could do that, right? But what I don't want is it to be registered as a separate Spring integration endpoint. I'm not sure if that really buys me anything in this case. So I'm going to do it inline for now, right? That way I can conceptually kind of see, because I don't want Spring integration to be upset that it's not being used and there's no inbound and outbound adapters, when in truth there is. It's just in this flow over here. Because it might, I don't know if Spring integration will detect the message endpoint annotation on it. So for now, I'm just going to keep it local, just so I can make it. I just want to make it wiggle. You know that expression, to make it wiggle. You want to see something work, and then you can make it cleaner, right? Okay, so integration flow, bean, conditional and missing bean, I guess. Care about that? No, I don't care about that right now. Okay, so requests are inbound message channel. This is outbound. Outbound message channel. All right, there's that. Inbound, outbound. Do we change the property file? Yeah, we did. So requests come in from something and they get put on this integration message channel. How do we get them from something? We need to start actually like connecting rubber and road here. So I think we actually do need some Spring integration logic, let's say for RabbitMQ or something. You know, we need to actually like be explicit about it. So for now, since I've got RabbitMQ running, I'll just use that. Let's think about this. There it is right there. That's the code. So inbound and outbound. Okay, so build that Gradle. What do I need here? I need start that Spring.io. AMQP. And we want Spring integration. So does that give me? Yeah, it gives me Spring integration AMQP, Spring AMQP, and the Spring integration dependency. Okay. Is this the same? It looks like it is. Spring batch integrate. No, that's not the same. But this is Spring. Yeah, I think that's exactly the same. So we don't need that. Do I have anything AMQP? No. Spring Boot Starter integration. No. Spring integration AMQP. Good. So let's just re-import that. So that belongs to the Spring package. No, not that one. This is the message channel request, or sorry, inbound. Okay. We're gonna call it that. Okay. And it's a message channel outbound. From the outbound channel, send the response via RabbitMQ. Okay, good. So, and then we can, let's rename this. Okay, so refactor inbound AMQP requests. Inbound AMQP integration flow. outbound MQP integration flow. Okay, so that's for now. We're just being very explicit about AMQP. But again, we want to write this code eventually so that we don't prescribe anything. Okay, let's just make sure it works. Like that's the goal here. It's just to make it work. Okay, so okay, actually I can just do good. Okay. Unchecked. Outbound, inbound. Got the message channel. So how does this interact with our main sample app code here? Okay, let's check in on that. So over here, we don't have anything really. So maybe we do want to keep this out. Maybe okay, let's just try, let's assume that we expect the user to provide the actual integration flow for the inbound and the outbound. That seems fair, right? Because again, we want their autoconfig to be written in such a way that the input is channels and nothing else. So what are they going to need to be able to do this? They're going to need a way to inject the correct channels. So again, we copy our annotations here from the leader node. Let's assume that these are now generic, part of the chunking core package. So inbound and outbound chunk channels. Okay, so we can use that on both leader node and worker nodes. You flip them around, right? So in the autoconfig worker node, this is now integrated with outbound chunk channel, and this is inbound chunk channel. All right, and we want that to be conditional and missing bean because there's two of them, and it's always going to be so. And then on the consumer code, this now is the inbound chunk channel. So when the data comes in on that channel, which we will factory in the autoconfig, great. And then what about the outbound? So when they're done processing the request, then you send it, our code will send it into the channel, which then the user can send via RabbitMQ to the outside world. Okay, that seems reasonable, right? That seems like we're doing all of this for the user. We provide the, oh, what about the item? Oh, no. So we do need to provide this as well. So the user needs to provide that, and we need to have a qualifier, don't we? Because we don't want to provide this by default. Right. Okay, so what about that? What about the ItemWriter and the item processor? So maybe we just have more qualifier annotations. Seems reasonable, right? Hey, cool. Did you see the new project reactor 3.53 just dropped? That's really cool. Let's see here. Share. Okay, so there's that. Get that bookmark for later. Cool. New reactor, new micrometer context propagation. Enable automatic. Ooh, that's so cool. So we have a value. We're publishing it. when we get a new value, we oh, cool. So this is actually taking a value in a thread local and then propagating it via this context propagation. Okay, anyway, back to our example here. Don't get distracted. I get distracted easily when I see cool stuff. Let's see here. So we do need that item processor and ItemWriter. And we need a way of saying that this particular one is the one that we need, right? Because otherwise we don't have a particular, we don't know. We just don't know, right? Okay, so this is the chunk processor. What is happening here? So what does this do? This gives us a chunk response. Oh, we need to capture that. So chunk response goes there, and we want to send that out on the outbound channel, right? So we can inject that channel as well. Okay, outbound chunk channel. Okay. Out.send message builder dot with body chunk response build. Okay, what's the issue with this? Payload. What's this? Message builder. Payload. Okay. So we're going to send it on the outbound channel. Good. That one screen. So what does this do? Handle chunk. How does that handle it? So this chunk processor handler is going to do the work. So this really should be a separate bean, but let's just try it. Why not? It's not like I've actually made it work at all in any form yet. So okay. Writer. Good. And okay, do we need the right one by the qualifier notation. So this generic type doesn't matter. Okay, so if that's true, then we don't need this here, but we do need to inject this thing right here. Okay. And we're just going to do it by object. Okay. But so we want the chunk item, the remote chunk item processor, and the remote chunk item writer. So we need to create annotations for that. So we can copy and paste here. Remote chunk, or just a chunk item processor. Chunk item writer. Yeah. So now that's the here. item processor, chunk. So now we're expecting the user to provide these, right? So as long as they provide bean the type item processor, then we can pass that in and that'll be okay. So now over here in our actual app code, not the autoconfig code, but our app code, we need to do that. So bean chunk ItemWriter of type, I don't even know what we said it was going to be of type. ItemWriter, earn new ItemWriter. Got this thing right here. Log.info, new chunk.get items for each info I. Where's the issue here? Oh, the type isn't clear, is it? So it's got to be an object. Wait. Chunk.get items. Okay. For var I items. Info. Okay, seems simple enough, but whatever. So here is where we do something long running, right? Log.info, doing the long running writing. Okay. And then we need the item processor. Now we want the item processor, but only if it's available. So I suppose we need some way of like providing a default. But let's assume that for now that we have one. Okay, so item processor, object to object, item processor, return, because this is optional, right? In the Spring Batch code, you don't, strictly speaking, need this. In fact, you don't even, you need a reader. There's three things. There's a reader, an item processor, an item reader, an item processor, and an item writer. But you can do just item reader and item writer. That's very common. You can do an item reader and a processor. Can you do that without the writer? I don't know. But, it's possible to just do with two of those out of three. Processing. Okay, item. Okay, item processor, item writer. So this is the consumer code. This is what the user would write. And in exchange, they don't have to write all of this craziness. So let's see if that works for us. And they don't even have to worry about Spring Batch code either. Oh, they do, right? There's a over here. Yeah, we're using the Spring. So they don't have to worry about Spring integration code. I mean, but yeah, they do. They have to worry about these channels and stuff. Okay, that's fair. Okay, that's not going to work yet until we also set up RabbitMQ on the producer side, the leader side. So let's copy and paste some of this stuff over here to the leader node sample application. Add this to tool.gradle. And get rid of some of the commented out stuff. Okay. Load. Okay, so now we're going to change this integration flow a little bit. So we're going to say when the RabbitMQ, when the message gets sent here, we're going to send it out. Do this again. We're going to borrow our example code from the original main app that we wrote earlier. So here's the leader. And where's our integration flow? Outbound flow looks like this. We're back in the leader code after all, so we don't really need all this. We can just comment that out. And then we can do template. This will be the outbound message channel. Out. Okay, that's this. That's outbound integration flow. So when our batch code needs to do some remote chunking, it sends the message on the outbound channel. Where does it go from the channel? It's a pipe. Like think of it like an actual physical pipe through which water flows, right? You put something in, where does it go? Where does the pipe drop the water off? Where does it deposit the water on the other side? And up until now, I just had this code where it just took the data and routed it right back on itself and it sent it back. So now we're gonna actually do live fire, sending data over RabbitMQ so that it'll get sent to something in RabbitMQ. The broker will deliver it to another JVM process. That's the worker code over here that we just finished building up. And then it'll send the response. And then now what? What happens on the response? Well, we have to do inbound integration flow. The nice thing about doing this with Spring Innovation is that the logic, I'm doing AMQP here, but who cares? I could do any of the supported technologies. This channel in get handle. So from the inbound data, no, it's going to be from inbound, isn't it? So it's going to be from the inbound channel adapter for AMQP. Where is that? Where did we put that? Reply flow, something like this. Okay, so inbound integration flow in, I have a connection factory for RabbitMQ. That replies, that's actually the broker destination, not my channel name itself. So we'll say channel. And the message, okay, we want to send it in, want to send it from RabbitMQ to the pipe, and then from the pipe it'll get sent to our batch chunking code. Okay, simple enough. That's late, so my brain is not as good as it could be, and I always get confused because you've got remember when you've got two different Java processes relative to the thing sending the message, the outbound channel is sending the message out from the producer of the message. And then from the perspective of the consumer of that message, to get that message, you listen for the inbound channel, right? So you always gotta keep that in your head. So, and especially if you're doing request reply, then you're sending out to another node, and then the reply is coming on the inbound channel. But on the other side, the thing answering, the request comes in on the inbound channel, and they get sent out when it's responded on the outbound channel. So it's flipped around, obviously. Okay, so how do we do? Does this still work? I mean, I'm really kind of. What do I need to do? I think I need to have a RabbitMQ running. That's probably important. So let's go to our example code here. Let's code Spring batch. Copy Docker Compose to this thing here. There. It's not. It's downloads, isn't it? Okay, CD downloads batch status. Okay, so git commit -a bound and outbound status. Git commit. Oh, sorry. Git add worker status. Git add Docker Compose. Git commit solo push. I don't know if this is going to work. I'm just using GitHub as a checkpoint mechanism at this point. Eventually, I'll go through and I'll squash everything and clean up my history. But thrashing. Okay, so Sublime, Docker Compose. I don't need Postgres. Well, I could use it as a message queue. If you watch that video on my channel, you can add Docker Compose, git commit, Compose, push. So Docker Compose up. Just creating RabbitMQ. And in order to connect to RabbitMQ, if you look at the Docker Compose file, actually user and passwords. I need to specify the user and password for both the leader and the worker nodes. Rats. So RabbitMQ username is user. Password is equal to password. Host, localhost. Virtual host, I think is just. Okay, so see if the leader node works if I connect to it. Doesn't connect. So let me just try removing that. Oh, bother. I need to set up the Spring integration. Sorry, the RabbitMQ configuration. Because it's a brand new Docker Compose instance. So here is a good chance for us to quickly borrow that other code that we wrote. So desktop, let's code. And you could do this manually on the broker itself, but it's just kind of one of those things where I like having it in code. That way my build is reproducible. I can just Maven, recreate the app by starting the app. Class, creating the queue, exchange, binding. So if you don't know RabbitMQ, the basics are in RabbitMQ, which is a broker like JMS or Kafka or whatever. You've got, let's see here, this is the RabbitMQ code. Let's just get that out of the way for now. It's still there. It'll be picked up when the app starts up. But basically, you've got exchanges, which are doors, like the door into the broker. You open the door. Now you're in the broker. Where do you go? Well, the exchange takes your message and then it routes it to something, right? So the exchange takes a message from the outside world. It's the door. And then it sends it somewhere else. And then where it sends it is kind of up to a lot of different things, but usually it has to do with a message key, right? So let's see, what is this topic? Oh, replies queue, replies binding, request binding. So replies queue is this thing here. Topic exchange. So anyway, requests go to, so the outside messages arrive at the broker via the exchange. They go from the exchange to a queue via some routing logic. So exchange queue, consumer comes along and it reads from the queue, not from the exchange. So there's a bit of indirection. The producer sends to the exchange, the consumer reads from the queue. They don't share the same thing. Like with JMS, you just have one javax.jms.destination, and both publisher and subscriber consume the same thing. And if you change the destination on the producer side, it breaks the consumer, which is stupidly fragile, right? It's just JMS is just a poor approach for messaging. It's broken. So queue replies in host. Let's see if this works. So Spring AMQP has this nice mechanism where if you define beans of the right types, AMQP queues and exchanges, and you create the binding that binds this queue to this exchange with this key. If you do all of that in your Java Spring Boot code, it'll automatically create the infrastructure on the broker for you, right? So that's nice. That's one of the nice things about AMQP is that the protocol for sending messages also includes explicit support for managing the objects on the broker from the protocol. So I can use the command line, I can do it in Python, I can do it in Java, I can do it in whatever I want. It's part of the protocol, the same protocol I use to send messages to the broker, I can also use to create the queues, create the bindings, create the exchanges, etc. The DDL, if you will, for your broker. Okay, so it looks like the moving parts are all there. And if I run the app, it starts up and it's waiting for a result to come back. It's been sent to RabbitMQ. We can confirm that by going to our RabbitMQ instance. And we'll use our super secret password and username. What do we got here? The requests, you can see it says, we've got one request. Okay, so we've got requests. Let's see here. And from this exchange, we're sent with this key, we're sending it to this queue, and this queue is called requests. Okay. So what messages do we have? Let's look at the messages. It's this, and so this is obviously a Java serialized object for our chunk request. Neat. Okay, so now what about the worker node? The worker node has to start up and do the opposite, right? We've never tried this before. So let's see, worker node application. The node application. I'm going to run this application here. Run the worker node application. Uh-oh. My autoconfig is not quite right. So we're saying the chunk processor must be provided for what? For the chunk processor chunk handler. Oh, so this thing, I'm actually, what was I doing there? I did it right two different ways, but I didn't do the right thing the one way, and so it broke. Okay, good. I broke it in a new way now. Access refused. Okay, that's easy enough. That's the properties to connect to RabbitMQ. Good. Start. Hey, look at that. Huh? So we got the name equals Dr. Sire, I equals Dr. Sire, blah, blah, blah. So looks like it worked. Waiting for one result. You can see it sent out the results, and then the results got sent back, right? So then the job completed, and the job, the step completed, and then the job completed. There we are. That's not bad, huh? So yeah, I like this. I like what we just did here, friends. Now, from a consumer and a producer's perspective, I define the integration flow. And I'm thinking of like, okay, if this is autoconfig, we could probably, with autoconfig, you can do conditional on class, right? I can define a bean that only exists so long as a type is on the class path. So I can define an integration flow like this that only exists if AMQP dot class and some sort of Spring AMQP type are on the class path. So this will be a RabbitMQ inbound AMQP integration flow. And I can do the same thing. I can create another integration flow, basically the exact same logic, except instead of using AMQP, it's Kafka. So I can do another one where I say conditional on class Kafka. So if you've got Kafka on the class path, great, then that integration flow will kick in. That's really convenient, right? That means I can have some common defaults. But if you wanted to override the default behavior, we can also make it conditional on bean, so that if you provide your own integration flow, then of course we'll just delegate to that. We'll use yours instead. Oh, but anyway, I think that's another day. It's after midnight here, and I'm gonna be up bright and early. So who learned something new today? I certainly did, that's for sure. Let's see here. Commit round trip successful. push. Okay, status and cat. So for those of you playing the home game and watching along at home, you can see all of this is on my personal GitHub repository under batch Spring Boot starter. Maybe I'll rename it, but basically that's where it lives right now. Yeah, that's really powerful. So now it can be a lot easier for people who just want to use it. Now the problem is, I don't know where, like if I publish this on Maven Central, that might be something, but maybe we can get something, maybe it could live in some of the official projects, where it's maintained a little bit better. The only problem there, of course, is that, Spring Boot sits on top of Spring Batch, right? And this uses Spring Boot. So Spring Batch I couldn't put this code in Spring Batch itself, since Spring Boot depends on Spring Batch, but this depends on Spring Boot. It depends on autoconfiguration, which is a Spring Boot mechanism, right? So it would create a circular dependency. So then the question is, where would this live? I think it's a little very specific for Spring Boot itself. So maybe one of the Spring Cloud projects, Spring Cloud Task sounds kind of interesting. Whatever, we'll figure that out later. Worst case, I just put it on Maven Central and it's fine. I can just use it from there. So, okay, well, the next stream, I still want to do a stream where I'll integrate this into the main app. I'll off stream probably sometime this week. I'll publish it on Maven Central, if nothing else, just for now. And then I can integrate it into the main app, and that'll clean up the main app that we built on the Let's Code stream considerably. Right? And then we'll come back and do another stream, 7.0, which is what I was planning on doing next anyway. But then I had this wild hair idea about, hey, what it would it look like if I did this autoconfig, extracted it out. But then the next stream will be, turning everything into a GraalVM native image, right? Turning it into really small applications that take 100 megs of RAM, that kind of thing. Friends, it's been fun. I'm gonna go to bed. It's late. I've had a long, crazy day. So I'm busy tomorrow. Tomorrow's going to be a fun day here. Well, I mean, today, actually, Wednesday, the 15th. It's going to be a fun day here in Chicago. So I'll catch you probably on Thursday. All right. Have a good night out, everybody.